Do forgive me, I'm not an expert. I've just been kind of dallying in the field on the sides as a journalist. So maybe it's the journalist's privilege to say some things. I have a question, I don't have an answer, but you're all experts. Where has the level playing field in aviation not been there in the last 3-4 decades that I've been seeing? If the foreign carriers are carrying more Indians than Indian carriers carrying Indians overseas, who's at fault? Is it the foreign carriers? I have a question. Is it the fault of the foreign carriers? If we have not been able to grow effective airlines in our own country, the fault lies with us. Is it Emirates' fault that they are carrying more Indians out of here and using Dubai as a hub and taking Indians? I think Emirates has done. I don't get any support from Emirates, so no disclosure is required. They have been able to provide us so much of connectivity for Indians around the world, which may not have come to us. I don't know what would have been around for us. We don't have our own carriers. If you see the history of Indian aviation, you are more conversant with it than I have. But from the monopoly days to when Mr. Azad, who has today resigned from the Congress, was the Minister for Aviation, and the aviation sector was opening up. What is the credibility, and I'm sorry, I'm being a little harsh, but what was the quality of people who came up to the aviation industry? It didn't attract any corporates. What happened to Jet Airways? What happened to Kingfisher? Why did they not grow? They had all the rights to go to Middle East, everything. They floundered. So it's somewhere unfortunate for us also as a country, as a people, that some of these things have happened. It's only now that a company like Tata has come back to the fold, we can expect some miracles to happen. Also, it's unfortunate again that Mr. Jhunjhunwala passed away just a few days back. So he was the first corporate to see some business happening in aviation. And so I think government and Mr. Karona, being senior most in the aviation ministry, somewhere we need little soul searching. Why has our aviation sector not grown? I also heard a couple of times a word aviation policy being referred to. Frankly, we've had no policy in the last 30 years. I'm sorry, I'm saying it very crudely or harshly, but policy has been dictated by different interests at various points in time. Whether an airline intervened, whether it was Air India which intervened, or a private airline that intervened. How did 520 rule come? Because somebody wanted that 520 rule to happen, and it did happen. So what kind of loss it caused to our aviation sector is well known. The fact of the matter is that we've had actually no aviation policy for the country as a whole, and that needs to come around. And to my mind, watching again the aviation sector again from a distance, I think somewhere an ecosystem where all verticals of the aviation sector have an equal stake in what the aviation policy would be like. At different points in time, when airports were closed, so airports got the edge. Because now airports became the favorite sport of the powers that be. They were promoted and given all kinds of incentives. Some incentives were not favorable to airlines. Similarly, airlines, when they were growing, they needed certain fillets, they were provided. But holistically, the whole sector has not been viewed to the rest of my understanding. And how it will be viewed will not be by government alone. It will have to involve the stakeholders. Why does policy not take off? I mean, Sarath has mentioned so many initiatives of BIMSTEC and so on, where policy statements have been made, nothing has come out of them. Because they were made only by government, without taking industry into confidence as to how they will happen. And if we are going to work on any initiatives for foreign policy or aviation as an instrument of foreign policy, I think it will be terribly important for stakeholders as a whole to come up, and we'll have to take them into confidence. You want airlines to fly to Vietnam. Now, Air Vietnam has just announced doubling or tripling of their flights to India in the last 10 days. I don't know. So many times we deny them, we talk about bilaterals. Now, if an airline is going to come to India, now it will look obviously at what is beneficial for that airline. It's not coming for charity. So I know Sri Lankan Airlines, for instance, for many years were looking for the traffic light which allows you to stop it on 2 points in your country. I think it's the 7th or 8th or something. The 5th, 6th is carrying my people to your country and beyond. Now this is for 2 points in your country. So Sri Lankan will come from Colombo, come to Patna. From Patna they will come to Delhi, and from Delhi they will go. So now they're also, will they be allowed to carry passengers from Patna to Delhi or no? So can they do that? So now these kind of issues come into play if we want to make them viable. And I think with the current growth that Mr. Karola was also mentioning, it's going to be terribly important as to how we are going to understand how the industry works and what is there in it for them. And from a tourism point of view, I just want to mention two important issues that I have learned over the years. Indian tourism industry, inbound industry, has traditionally only looked at Western markets for their business. They have never looked at South Asia or Thailand, or even Singapore. They don't look as a major market. They have always looked traditionally at the Western world. So now with COVID, domestic has become big. Our supply within the country has not grown phenomenally at all in terms of hotels. Whatever growth you see, it's getting absorbed more than adequately by and large by domestic Indians alone. When will Indian tourism industry start looking towards providing any or looking at growth from Far East, from Vietnam or Cambodia? I don't see it happening in the near foreseeable future. And I just want to say that Mr. Kaul, with due deference, I just want to say that while you did mention about soft power as an instrument, and I do know that very often on my travels into Nepal and Sri Lanka, I've heard some very distasteful remarks on Indians from my friends about how India is a big bully, is a big brother, who is bullying us on some time or the other. The road blockage which Mr. Rajiv Gandhi had ordered many years back, when the entire land route had been closed, we got a lot of brickbats from them, and they still think we are bullies. And Ranil Wickremesinghe the other day mentioned how they are becoming a part of big power politics. What he didn't say is that they've been playing one big power against the other, and very often it does land up in the wrong, it pinches them off as well. But tourism could certainly be the soft power that we're looking at. They may not want our bullying tactics, but they do want our tourism. They also want our cinema. They want our cinema, but I don't think we as Indians can subsidize filming of in Bollywood films in Sri Lanka or in